Hello, welcome aboard Guenevere, our North Sea 27.
Decided our next stop would be Isla San Geronimo. We wanted to stop at islands if we could, just something we thought would be fun. We anchored in 25 foot of water. There was quite a bit of wind here, and we decided not to put the dinghy in the water, so again we did not get to go to shore. We got an email. This windling system is magic, from another boat that had stopped at Geronimo a few nights before us. They said that as soon as they dropped their anchor, they were covered with kelp flies. Well, we decided to try it anyway. There is a lot of kelp here, and I can believe that the flies could be a problem. We made our way to an area near where the locals keep their small boat on a mooring. What do you know? No flies. The next morning, still no flies. We were learning that the same place could be very different from day to day and boat to boat. We kept this in mind as we moved on along. Isla San Geronimo makes an absolutely great spot to stop and rest up and prepare to pass Arrecife Sacramento or Sacramento Reef. Make no mistake, this is a serious navigation hazard if you are sailing these waters. It's about 2 miles long by 1 mile wide and has claimed many ships. We were glad we departed in the morning, so we were wide awake and alert.
Free to navigate.
Next stop, San Carlos Anchorage. It was about 20 nautical miles to San Carlos Anchorage. The information from our cruising guide suggested that this is a very popular and well-used anchorage. It states that it is a good jumping-off point for Sidros Island, and that sounded good to us. However, upon arrival, we found it not very secure for the wind conditions that we were having. Bahia San Carlos is more like an open roadstead than a bay. It did not provide us with a lot of protection. We dropped our anchor in about 25 feet of water, far enough offshore to be safe, but tucked in enough to get out of the big waves. Our next planned stop was going to be the San Benito's Islands, and they are about 80 nautical miles, definitely an overnight passage. So we were planning to spend 2 nights here to rest up for the next leg. The next morning, when we woke up, we noticed that the wind had not gone down overnight and the waves were still up a bit. We made the best of it that we could. About noon or so, a local fishing panga that was returning to shore slowed as it went by us and yelled something to us. We did not know for certain what he was saying, but we guessed it had something to do with more wind coming. As the day progressed, the wind and the waves just kept building. We spent the day watching the weather build and discussing strategies. About 4 p.m. we decided that the hard stuff was more to be avoided. Although we didn't want to go out into these building seas, we didn't want to fend off on a lee shore in the dark of night either. By 4:30, the waves that had been breaking only 50 feet from shore were now breaking closer to us than the shore. So, to sea we went. As we departed San Carlos anchorage, the wind and seas were still building. The weather was predicted to be blowing 40 knots from the northwest, with 12-plus foot seas from about the same direction. We made a course for the Isla San Geronimo, 15 miles west of Sidros Island. We decided this would be an interesting stop as most people traveling this coast pass it by. After about an hour, it was clear that the following large waves would not let us make a safe course to San Benito. So we altered course for Sidros Island. I have to tell you that this passage was not one of the high points of our trip so far. The seas were over 18 foot. The wind at or above 40 knots. I guess at this point we have to confess that not all of our time out here is fun and games. At 02:18 a.m., we had a rogue wave. That's a wave much larger than most and coming from a far different direction. Hit the starboard side just about at the cockpit. We were both wearing our harnesses. I looked down and saw Jill sitting in the cockpit footwell in what looked like a bubbling white jacuzzi with her foul weather gear on. If we had not been harnessed to the boat, we would have gone overboard. On a nice warm sunny day, this would be funny. But let me tell you, on a cold dark night, in a storm, far out to sea, this was no fun. We certainly had our hands full taking care of the boat. We got no rest at all this evening. We did reach an anchorage on Sidros Island the next morning. The anchorage we stopped at is referred to as the North Anchorage. It is supposed to be a very nice and calm and protected, but with the large waves outside the island, it still had a lot of roll to it. We have talked to other sailors since then and been told that the trip between San Carlos and Sidros can be very perilous. Several boats have been lost in this area. We dried ourselves out, rested, and the next day headed further along Sidros, looking for a more restful anchorage. We headed south along the west side of Sidros Island. The cruising guide we have said there was an excellent anchorage on the southern end of the island. There is also a small fishing harbor almost to the southern tip. We made a pass close to the harbor as we headed to look at the southern bay. Once we were able to see the bay, we immediately did a 180 and headed for the harbor. The bay was full of whitecaps.
We had hoped to anchor away from the village of Sidros as it is a port of entry and has an official harbor master. Here in Mexico, if you stop at or near a harbor that has a harbor master, you have to check in and out. That normally means a lot of paperwork and at least a day to do it. Also, it can delay your departure, as you cannot just head out at will. You must check out with the authorities first. We asked ourselves why we were so determined to avoid the check-in process. We should look at it as an adventure.
The next day, we put our dinghy down and headed around to the entrance of the breakwater and looked for a place to tie up. We heard someone whistle and saw a man indicating a spot for us to tie up. This turned out to be Isaac, the harbor master. and he gave us a ride to his office, which is about a half a mile up the road from the harbor. He speaks excellent English. So here we were practicing our broken Spanish, and he was answering us in perfect English. We quickly finished our paperwork. He checked us in and out at the same time, so we will not have to come back before we leave. We asked where immigration was, and he said he would drive us. It is located in the southernmost tip of the island, where there is an airport. We were also checked in and out there. Isaac then gave us a tour of the village. He told us they only have about 3 pleasure boats visit them per month. He told us the village makes their living by catching tuna to sell to the Japanese market. If the tuna are not large or the ships have not come in, they keep the tuna in a jail and feed them sardines. They grow bigger and are ready when the ships come in. These tunas sell for better than $1,000 each. The salt company on the southern end of the island, about 5 miles away, brings salt across the bay from Guerrero Negro by barge. This is then shipped all over the world to be used in cold, snowy areas on the roads. This is a very prosperous town. The cruising guide mentioned a fish fertilizer company that smells bad, but it is no longer there and hasn't been for quite some time. They have many cars and trucks here, even though it looks like a very small village, and most of the roads are not paved. Before he dropped us back at the harbor, Isaac invited us to anchor inside the breakwater. We walked all over town and really enjoyed our time here. There were no other gringos here at all, and not much English spoken, but we sure had fun using our Spanglish. We found a great small restaurant and had a wonderful plate of 3 lobster burritos each for under $10 US. As far as coming down the outside, this was probably our favorite anchorage. But after about a week, we sadly upped our anchor and headed out. Turtle Bay was now just ahead of us. It is only about 30 miles, that's 6 to 7 hours, from Sidros to Turtle Bay, if we made good time. We dropped our anchor not far off the village, in about 20 foot of water, and started putting stuff away after the passage. Almost before we had to anchor down, Annabelle Fuel Service was out to help us with anything we might need, from fuel to trash pickup, freshwater delivery, and rides to and from the beach. We bought fuel and caught a ride to shore and back, a couple of times in a pongo. We explored the village and found the internet cafe and had a great fish dinner. At about this time, I began having a toothache. Not good in the middle of nowhere. A dentist friend of ours put together an emergency kit for us before we departed. He included a great, easy-to-follow treatment tree. After referring to it, the course of action was to take a 7 to 10 day treatment of antibiotics and see a dentist as soon as possible. Well, remember the antibiotics we bought for Jill? I now began taking them. We found that there is a dentist here. However, he's here only once a week, and it was yesterday, and so was not due to return for a week. We could wait here for the dentist to return or continue on.
It was up to Greg to decide, as it was his owie. We made plans to head to Mag Bay, about 300 miles south, to see if there was a dentist there. We felt we should be able to get there before the meds ran out.
We upped anchor and headed out of Turtle Bay. arrived in Abreojos after a 24-hour passage. It's a small open bay that provides a safe anchorage when the winds are blowing from the northwest. There's a small village here. We did not go ashore, as it is a much smaller village than Turtle Bay. We didn't believe we would find a dentist here. Just a word here about our ham radio and night passages. Since we've been out, we've found that if you absolutely positively must talk to someone, just anyone, the ham radio is the way to go. Occasionally, on night passages, when weather permitted and Jill was on watch, I would go below and make contact using the ham radio. In the evening, when we were on our way to Abreojos, I was trying to contact Monty in Northern California and was not getting through. Another ham in Arizona popped up and informed me he could hear me clearly and he could hear Monty clearly. He volunteered to pass information back and forth for us. So you can see we're very happy with having our ham license. Another major benefit of having your ham license is the WinLink email system. From our boat, anywhere in the world, we can send and receive email to and from anyone on the internet. The only restriction is you can't use it for business, but it's free to use. Yeah, we rested for the evening and let the antibiotics work. By this time, the pain had mostly gone away, but we did not dally and headed out the very next morning. Bahia Santa Maria was another overnight trip. There are places along the way that look like great stops, but our quest for a dentist was driving us on. Bahia Santa Maria is a beautiful bay. We saw the Navy ship anchored in the bay, so we were not surprised when they came alongside in an inflatable and asked to come aboard Guenevere.
They can be intimidating as they wear full uniform, big heavy black boots, and carry machine guns. They seemed very young to me and reminded me of our sons, so we enjoyed talking to them, and they were actually very friendly and polite. They checked to see that our paperwork was in order and seemed surprised that I am listed as the navigator. The officer in charge asked to look below, and I showed him our navigation equipment. He seemed impressed with our well set up little boat.
After they departed, we ate dinner and prepared to depart in the morning. We would love to go ashore and explore, but it won't be this time. Bright and early the next morning, we headed out.